India is adding 12 million people to its workforce every single year. By 2040, they'll have the largest working-age population in human history, 1.1 billion people ready to power the global economy. But here's the paradox that nobody's talking about. While China built its empire on factories and exports, India is betting everything on a completely different playbook. And if they're right, it could flip the entire global power structure on its head. Because while everyone's been watching the US-China rivalry, India has been quietly building something that neither superpower saw coming. They've created a digital infrastructure that processes 18 billion transactions per month, more than the rest of the world combined. They're producing more STEM graduates than the United States and Europe put together. And they're doing it all while maintaining the one thing China sacrificed for growth: democracy. But there's a catch, a massive one. And it explains why India's destiny isn't to become the next China, it's to become something entirely different. I'm James Whitfield from Faultline Economics. While others chase headlines, we examine the systems that actually shape history, geography, demographics, and economic fundamentals. Today, we're analyzing India's paradoxical rise to power. This is strategic clarity in a complex world. Let's turn to the strategic map. India sits at the crossroads of global trade, commanding the Indian Ocean, through which 40% of the world's oil flows. To the north, the Himalayas form a natural barrier against China. To the west, Pakistan. To the east, Bangladesh and Myanmar. This geography has kept India relatively isolated for centuries. But in the digital age, that isolation is becoming irrelevant. The timing here is critical. As China's population peaks and begins its decline, India is entering what economists call a demographic dividend, a period where the working-age population vastly outnumbers dependents. But raw numbers don't tell the whole story. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Factor 1. The demographic divergence. India's median age is 28.8 years. China's is 39.1 and accelerating toward 50 by mid-century. This isn't just about youth, it's about economic potential. Every year until 2040, India will add approximately 8 to 10 million people to its workforce. China, they're losing 7 million workers annually. By 2050, China will have 2 workers supporting every retiree. India will have 5. But here's where it gets interesting. Unlike China's controlled demographic planning, India's youth bulge is organic, diverse, and digitally native. These aren't factory workers. They're coders, engineers, and service professionals. India's female workforce participation is only 32.8%, less than half of China's, that is 60.5%. If India can't integrate women into the workforce, they'll waste half their demographic dividend. This single factor could determine whether India becomes a superpower or remains perpetually emerging. Factor 2. The leapfrog economy. Now, here's where India breaks every development rule in the book. While China became the world's factory, India became the world's back office. Their IT services sector generates $282 billion annually, 10% of GDP. But that's not the revolutionary part. India has built something called the India Stack, a digital public infrastructure that's transforming how 1.4 billion people interact with the economy. Their unified payments interface processes more real-time payments than the US, China, and Europe combined. Street vendors in Mumbai accept digital payments. Farmers in Bihar access credit through their phones. This isn't just financial inclusion, it's economic revolution. The data doesn't lie. In 2016, India had 17 million digital transactions per month. Today, 18 billion. That's a 1,000 times increase in less than a decade. Factor 3. The strategic triangle. Let's connect the dots. India has positioned itself as the only democracy that can counterbalance China. This isn't ideological, it's structural. The West needs a manufacturing alternative to China. India needs technology and investment. It's a perfect strategic marriage. But India refuses to choose sides. They're in the Quad with America while buying oil from Russia. They're in BRICS with China while fortifying their border against them. This multi-alignment strategy drives Washington crazy. But it's exactly what keeps India valuable to everyone. Here's what they won't tell you. India is the only country that maintains strategic relationships with the US, Russia, Israel, Iran, and the Arab states simultaneously. In a multipolar world, that's not confusion, that's power. Factor 4. The innovation ecosystem. India has produced more than 100 unicorn startups with a collective value exceeding $365 billion. But forget Silicon Valley comparisons. India's innovation is different. They're not building the next Facebook, they're solving problems for the next billion users. Digital payments for the unbanked, telemedicine for rural areas, educational tech in 22 languages. And then there's space. India landed on the moon's south pole, a feat neither America nor China has achieved. They did it for $75 million, less than the budget of the movie Interstellar. This isn't just about technology, it's about a fundamentally different approach to problem solving. But all of this hinges on one deciding factor: human capital development. India produces 1.5 million engineers annually. Impressive, right? Here's the problem. 88% of India's workforce is in low-skill occupations. Over half have only primary education or less. This is India's Achilles heel. They have the world's largest youth population. But without massive investment in education and skills training, that demographic dividend becomes a demographic disaster. Millions of unemployed youth is a recipe for instability, not growth. Now, let's connect the dots. What do you think is the most critical challenge facing India's rise, the skill gap, women's workforce participation, or infrastructure deficits? Drop your analysis in the comments. I read every strategic insight you share. This changes the entire equation. China's model was simple: mobilize rural labor for manufacturing. India can't replicate that in 2025. Global supply chains are regionalizing. Automation is eliminating low-skilled jobs. The ladder China climbed no longer exists. So India is building a different ladder entirely. Services over manufacturing, digital over physical, democracy over autocracy. It's slower, messier, but potentially more sustainable. Climate change threatens India's agricultural sector, which still employs 45% of the workforce. Water scarcity, extreme heat, and monsoon disruption could trigger massive internal migration. We're talking about hundreds of millions of climate refugees within India's own borders. This is a strategic time bomb. This connects directly to our analysis of China's demographic crisis and why it changes everything about global power. You can find that breakdown in the card above, and in the description it reveals another piece of this strategic puzzle. So, what does this mean for the global balance of power? By 2050, India will be the world's third largest economy that's virtually guaranteed by demographics alone. But whether they become a true superpower depends on three variables. First, integrating women into the workforce. If they match even half of China's female participation rate, it adds $3 trillion to their economy. Second, the education revolution. They need 500 million skilled workers by 2040. Current trajectory gives them 200 million. That gap determines everything. Third, climate adaptation. If they can't manage water resources and agricultural transition, internal chaos will prevent external projection of power. Here's the strategic bottom line. India won't be the next China because they're not trying to be. They're building a service-based, digitally driven, democratic superpower. It's never been done before. The blueprint doesn't exist. The future isn't written, but the blueprint is there for those who know how to read it. India's rise isn't about replacing China. It's about creating an entirely new model of power for the 21st century. Whether they succeed will reshape not just Asia, but the entire global order. If this kind of strategic analysis helps you understand our complex world, subscribe to help us create more content like this. Stay strategic.